chairperson of this session. And thank you all the students and other research scholars who are here today. And I would like to thank our head of the department and Professor Kanagaraj, his warden, who are here with us today. And in the first session, our topic will be on Introduction to Human Rights, which will be given by Rebecca Alarindiki. She is an assistant professor at Government Mizoram Law College and who did her LLB from Delhi University in the year 2008 and LLM from Indian Law Institute, Delhi, 2011. And let us call upon Rebecca Alarindiki to start this session.
Can you see me? Moderator, how much time do I have? Mr. Moderator. Anyway, I will not be taking long to give the presentation. Yes, I am Ms. Rebecca Alarindiki from Government Mizoram Law College. Today my topic is quite vast. It's on development of human rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, constitutional provisions in India, international covenants regarding human rights. I am sure you all are familiar with the term human rights. Yes, to begin with, let me ask you, what do we mean by human rights? Yes, we all are familiar with the term human rights, and I'm sure different answers will pop out from this room of different answers, but it might quite be similar as well. So human rights, when we talk about human rights, it's a two-term. Literally, human is like a member of the Homo sapien species, a man, a woman, a child, or a person. And rights means things to which you are entitled or allowed, freedoms that are guaranteed. Okay. Now, by being born as a human being, okay, by being born as a human being, you have a right which is called human right. Okay, that right is inalienable right. Simply because you are human, you have that right. That is a human right. That is inalienable right, inherent right. Okay, it's a birthright, irrespective of your caste, creed, religion, sex, or nationality. You have that right. Okay, that is about human right. Now, to explain it, I will give you one example. One play of Antigone. Here in this play, the core meaning of human rights has been laid down, where Antigone's, the play is written by Sophocles. Okay, this play is a Greek play. So here, there is Antigone, where her brother, she rebelled against the king. Okay, Antigone's brother rebelled against the king, and during that time, he was killed. So the king, Creon, he denied to give a proper burial to Antigone's brother because he rebelled against the king. So, going against the king's order, Antigone, she gave a proper burial to her brother. And when she was arrested by the king's men, she said that her brother have that dignity, okay, that right, which even the king cannot override it. Okay, the laws of heaven, which even the king could not override. So this is about human right. Okay, some dignity which even the worst criminal cannot be. Even the worst criminal have. That is a human right. Okay, so the gist of human right lies in the dignity of an individual. Even the worst criminal have that dignity which you cannot take away from him. because it is a human right. Okay? So the Chief Justice of India, J.S. Verma, has rightly stated that human dignity is a quintessence of human rights. It is the ideal. Dignity is the ideal of human rights. Coming into the Universal Declaration, we all know of the World War II, Second World War, where it was shattered. The world was shattered by the Second World War, and we know that the atrocities which was committed by the Nazi Germany, it became apparent after the Second World War. Okay? So shocking crimes was committed to human, where the fundamental rights was suppressed at the time of the Second World War. So at the time, different countries, they came together and they find the need of forming some movement, okay, in order to bring peace, harmony. So they come together and they form the UN, United Nations, in 1945. So the UN General Assembly on 10 December 1948, they made a declaration, okay, a declaration which is called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Have you heard of this, Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Yes. This contains, this declaration is a very, very important declaration because it contains all the human rights, all the documents which is important for the people living in this planet. Okay? So, this is a declaration. So, since it's a declaration, it is non-binding. That means it does not have a legal effect. There is no obligation on the part of the state to ratify it. Okay? So, when it is a declaration, there is no binding effect. That means the state who signed this declaration need not carry it out. Okay? You may say that the state might say that, oh, it's a very good declaration, we will follow it, we will see to it. But it doesn't mean that they will ratify it and put it in their laws. Okay? That is about this UDHR. So this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it consists of 30 articles. Okay? Now these articles, when you see to these articles, it is broadly divided under two heads. One consists of the civil and political rights, and the other one consists of economic, social and cultural rights. Before I deal with the articles, let us look at the preamble. The preamble states, recognition of the inherent dignity. Okay? Dignity, when we talk about human rights, we talk about the dignity. Okay? Inherent dignity and of equal and inalienable rights of all members of human family is the foundation of freedom, justice and peace in the world. So in order to maintain peace and security in this world, we need to protect human rights. So this is the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, if you look into Article 3 to 21, it mainly talks about the civil and political rights. Though, if you look into the declaration, you will not see it divided under this head, like the civil and political rights, but for you to understand it, I put it in this way so that it will be easier for you to understand. Article 3 to 21 mainly deals with the civil and political rights. Now, what do you mean by civil and political rights? Can you tell me one example? One example of civil and political rights? Do you cast your vote recently? Yes. What else? I need some response. Okay, anyway, civil and political rights, they are always together. They are interrelated, so they are put together. Now, civil, when we talk about civil rights, it pertains to those rights which protects the right to life, okay? Right to life and personal liberty, where the individuals get participation in the society and that his rights should be protected. Now, whenever we say civil and political rights, you should remember that it is a negative right. Okay? Negative right. When I say negative right of the state. Negative right of the state. Okay? That means it puts an obligation to the state to put their hands off. Okay? They cannot interfere. The state cannot interfere in the civil and political rights. Okay? That is about, that is why we call it negative rights. So the state cannot interfere. Like that means the individual, the citizen will live their free life. They will cast their vote. They will have the right to speech and expression where the state will not interfere in that. Okay? It's a negative right on the part of the state. So there are different provisions like right to life, liberty and personal security, Article for freedom from slavery, freedom from torture and degrading treatment, right to recognition as a person before the law, right to equality before the law, right to remedy by competent tribunal, freedom from arbitrary arrest and exile, right to fair public hearing, right to be considered innocent until proven guilty, freedom from interference with privacy, family, home and correspondence, right to free movement in and out of the country, right to asylum in other countries from persecution, right to nationality and freedom to change it, right to marriage and family, right to own property, freedom of belief and religion, freedom of opinion and information, right of peaceful assembly and association, right to participate in government and in free election. Okay, this is about the civil and political rights. Okay, now that is the civil part which I have explained. The political part is your interference, your participation in government, like your right to vote, in contesting in an election. Okay, that is about the political rights. Now, one illustration, one example I would like to give you is on civil right is a case in 1955, which is there's a lady, there's a woman named Rosa Parks. Okay, Rosa Parks in America. She's a working lady. She did her 9-to-5 job, working in an office. Okay, so during that time in America they have the law that whenever the white people enter into the bus, the black people will have to rise up from their seat and offer their seat to the white. Okay, that was the norm, the law in America in 1955. Okay, so this lady, this Rosa Parks, one day she decided that I will not offer my seat to the white. Okay, so when she refused to give her seat to the white entering the bus, the driver asked her to rise up from the seat, and when she refused that, she was reported to the police and she was arrested. Okay, so when she questioned the policeman, like, why do you arrest me? Then the policeman said that because there is a law and you have violated that law. Okay, now here, one is human right, and the other side there is the law. Okay, there is a law at one side, but at the other side there is human right. Okay, so what will we do here in this situation? There is a conflict between human right and the law. Here, like they fought, this is the time where they fought for their civil rights. Okay, so here the lady Rosa Parks, she not only fought for her seat, but she fought against segregation, which was prevailing at that time. Okay, segregation means the discrimination that was prevailing in America at that time. So her civil right, the right to equality, was very much intruded by the state itself. Okay, so it was fought here, and it was the time of Martin Luther. So like the movement was going on at that time. So that is about the civil right, where the state should not interfere. Here also the law was not good enough. Okay, the law was bad, we can say that, because it intrudes on the right, the human right of the citizen. Okay. Now moving on to the second part. The economic, social and cultural rights. Article 22 to 27 of the UDHR, it comprises of the economic, social and cultural rights. Now this is just the opposite of the civil and political rights. It's a positive right. Positive right, when we say the positive right on the part of the state, where the state has to take active intervention, okay? Because it deals with the economic, the social and cultural rights of the citizen, of the individual. So the state has to take active part. It has to see that the rights, the economic rights, the social rights, the cultural rights of the individuals are taken care of, okay? Otherwise, if the state says that I cannot interfere at the times of emergency, if this right has been suspended, then people will starve, right? So, like here in economic, under economic, we can say the rights of workers, where everyone has the right to work, and his safety and participation has to be seen. And like under social, the right to education, like we see here in Article 26, right to education, where people has to be literate in order to participate in the civil and political rights. In order to cast their vote, in order to contest in the election, they need to have some education, they need to be literate. Otherwise, if the economic, social and cultural rights are not seen properly, how will the civil and political rights be taken care of? So it is all interrelated, okay? And the cultural rights, as has already been said by the chief guest as well, respecting the culture of a society or the people of the state. Okay? So this is the economic, social and cultural rights, like from Article 22, right to social security, right to desirable work and to join trade union, right to rest and leisure, right to adequate living standard, right to education, right to participate in the cultural life of the community. Okay? These are the provisions which comprises of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Though it has not been split up in the two heads, but for better understanding, I put it under two heads, okay, the civil and political and the social, economic and cultural. Now let us see it under the Indian Constitution. How far have we followed this Universal Declaration of Human Rights? India is also a signatory to this declaration, okay? But since it's a declaration, as I have already told you, since it's only a declaration, it does not mean that we have to ratify it in our constitution or laws. But still, since the provisions of the UDHR is a very good one, okay? And we know that the UDHR, it came in the year 1948, and our constitution came into force on 26 January 1950. But if you see the provisions of the Constitution, like especially Part 3 of the Constitution, you will see that it is very much similar with the UDHR. Okay? So, Part 3 of Constitution dealing with fundamental rights are similar to the provisions of the UDHR. So, let us see what are the similar provisions. Like, our Part 3 deals with fundamental rights in our Constitution, and that is, the first one is the equality before law, Article 14. It is also under Article 7 of the UDHR. Okay? Likewise, Article 15, prohibition of discrimination, is under UDHR Article 7. Okay? You can relate all the provisions of our Constitution from the UDHR. So India has very much ratified this declaration in the Constitution of India. Shall I read it out, or it's okay, you can read it by yourself, right? These are all the provisions which are both in the UDHR and in the Indian Constitution. Okay? That is about the UDHR. And now, the last part, the Covenants on Human Rights. International Covenants on Human Rights. There are two covenants, okay? Since I say that UDHR is just a declaration, So the UN, they want it to be some covenant, okay? Some treaties or covenant which has some binding effect, okay? Because in a covenant, once you signed it, you have to ratify it, okay? That is the thing. It has a legal obligation on the part of the state to carry it out. So in the year 1966, two covenants came out, which is ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and ICESCR, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. These are the two covenants, and I have explained the meaning of both the covenants under UDHR in both the part, okay, civil and political, economic, social, cultural. So this ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it has two optional protocols, which is laid down in 1976 and 1991. And the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it consists of 53 articles, which is divided into 6 parts. Okay, so the part 1, 2, 3 consists of those various rights. When we say Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it deals with those rights, those civil and political rights which we have laid down in the UDHR, which I have explained under Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But it is not only those rights which has been laid down in UDHR, there are some other rights which has been added as well. And the rest of the parts, it deals with the implementation procedures. And the ICSCR, it consists of 30 articles which has been divided in 5 parts. Okay, so this is about the covenants. Since I have already explained the meaning of civil and political and the economic, social and cultural rights, so I have not gone into detail because I was allotted only 30 minutes. So that is the outline of my presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, our respected chairperson, Mrs. Rebecca Rindike, for her presentation on the introduction to human rights. And I would like to invite all the participants who are present here today to ask questions, whatever skeptical thoughts you have, you can ask the chairperson.
First of all, I would like to say thanks because it's a very brainstorming session, and a law which we need to encourage in the modern perspective. These all are in the 1950s and 60s, but nowadays the social media, all other medias will come, and it will be, moreover we need to understand the modern scenarios. So I don't know, my thought, it is not a question, just a thought that why these cultural aspects is entirely different from the laws or human rights in different states in India. And when we are discussing about in the Western scenario, when you are talking about the Universal Declaration, how it is different from our cultural aspects. That is my just question. The question is this, clearly the thing is that how it is different. This Universal Declaration is different from our Indian scenario, how it is different. What are the difference you found?
Difference in the sense that, like, even we have the cultural aspect in our fundamental rights as well. So I didn't get your question. Like, we have the right of self-determination that is very much under cultural.
Then what are any other specific things which will be found, or any other things? For example, in the university it is a general thing. It is based on their cultural aspects. It is based on some, when you discussed about the examples and all, that is based on their cultural aspects. What is different in India which we form? anything which will be
Culture. I don't know. Sorry.
The question is that what is the difference in the cultural aspects from in the Western point of view? The law is different. When we are talking about law or human rights, they have a lot of different. I also don't know.
But see, if we the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is very universal. Okay, it is meant not only for a particular country or particular state. It is, since it's Universal Declaration, it is used by anyone in the planet, as I have already said in my presentation. So even India has ratified it. I mean, we cannot just say ratify it, but all the provisions of the Constitution, especially Part 3 of the Constitution, if you see the fundamental rights, we see all the reflection of the UDHR. Okay, so the cultural aspect has also been reflected in the Part 3 of the Indian Constitution as well. So that cultural thing, though it might differ from country to country, state to state, but the principle is the same. Principle is the same.
Since we don't have any more questions, then we will end our session 1. And thank you, Ms. Rekal Indiki. We'll start straight away with our second session, since the chairperson is also already here. He is assistant professor, Department of Political Science, Mizoram University. Let us call upon Dr. Jesse Zongwantanga to have a speech on human rights institutions in India.
Rights Commission in India. Okay, so I shall begin directly to our topic. I quote Mahatma Gandhi with regard to human rights, which touched me very much, is that it has always been a mystery to me how men can feel themselves honored by the humiliations of their fellow human beings. See, when we talk about human rights, it's basically what Mahatma Gandhi meant is that when we talk about human rights, we are talking about a right, a privilege that has been denied to the weaker section of our fellow human beings, and which had been overruled by the stronger section of the society. So in that instance, whenever we hear the word human rights, it's a kind of a negative thing in the right sense of the term. If we say that when we talk about human rights, we are trying to figure out what went wrong in the society, because there is so much of discrimination against the weak by the strong. Okay, so in that instance, Mahatma Gandhi had rightly pointed out in a very touching sentence that how can a human being feel honored when his own fellow human being is being discriminated against? That is a very touching meaning to the term human rights. Okay, because basically National Human Rights Commission is all about human rights, the protection of human rights in India. Okay, so in that instance I quoted Mahatma Gandhi. And coming to the context of the universal definition of the term human rights are, as we know, that commonly understood as the inalienable fundamental rights to which a person is inherently entitled simply because he or she is a human being. Okay, so in that instance, nobody can be denied of their rights when we talk about human rights. So in that instance, we are going, I think in the first lecture you might have heard about some of the concept on human rights. So taking on that, following on that lecture, I simply put the definition of the term as being something which is inherently connected to a human being, okay, without any discrimination. So, and that human rights is something which is universal. it is not subjected to some, Western society. It is not subjected to some, Eastern societies. Basically, human rights is something with which a human being, wherever he or she is, has that right. Okay, so it is conceived as universal, and the very basic concept of human rights is its egalitarianism. I don't know what you mean by egalitarianism, in the sense that you and me are equal. Okay, whether you are born of a rich family, whether you are born of a poor family, there is no distinction in the eye of the law. Means like everyone has the right to live, everyone has the right to enjoy his or her right. So that's the egalitarianism within the concept of the human rights. Okay, and basically human rights is a cornerstone of public policy. What do you mean by public policy? See, for example, we have just recently experienced our Mizoram Assembly elections. So if we read or if we go through the manifestos of each political party, they are all selling themselves to be the best in terms of development for the states, right? So that's manifesto, the policy with which they try to bring about development in the society or in the state, is a public policy. And if we look at it very carefully through the lens of human rights, okay, this public policy is all based on the concept of human rights. Meaning, for example, why are they selling an ADP, or for example SEDP, or for that matter, see, all their public policy is concerned about uplifting, okay, uplifting the condition of the poor in the state. That means, in other words, it is a very egalitarian policy with which they are trying to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. So in that instance, if we looked at through the prism of the human rights, we can very rightly point it out that human right has always been a cornerstone of public policy, whether it be here in Mizoram, whether it be in the national level, or for that matter in the international level. Whatever, if we read through, if we go through, if we make an analysis of any public policy for that matter, at the end of the day, the corner, the foundation is always based on how to bring about an egalitarian society. Okay, and that comes from the concept of human rights. Are you following it? So that's how we looked at human rights, and that is how we see and how we are going to analyze the human concept. Okay, and I think based on the first lecture, though I have not heard about it, but if we go through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and all that, see, through that history, I think you might have just listened that there are 3 generations of human rights. Namely, the civil and political rights, which is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and comes the economic, social, and cultural rights. See, the economic, social, and cultural rights is about the right to subsistence. Okay, where we are talking about the concept of development here. Alright, see, when we look at the first generation of civil and political rights, this is where we find the right to life and political participation. See, this has been denied in the first instance. If we looked at the history of even the Western societies, or for that matter the American societies, if we go through their history of political process, see, for example, the women has never enjoyed the right to life, the right to vote. Okay, we knew that the American Declaration of Independence was way back in 1776, right? But don't think, for instance, for 1 minute that even in the American society, which was supposed to be one of the most advanced and rational, okay, women had never enjoyed the right to vote. It only came after a decade or after a century, I should say. Okay, for that instance, the first generation was all about civil and political rights, where you are fighting for the right to life and a political participation in the political process. So in that instance, the wave for the recognition of the dignity of every human being, irrespective of their birth, citizenry, is about the right to life and political participation. That becomes the first generation with which even the societies of the West were slowly beginning to realize. And secondly, we see the second wave with regard to the economic, social and cultural rights, meaning where now the focus had shifted from the enjoyment of civil and political rights to the right to subsistence, where everyone should enjoy minimum protection for their economic rights. Means like where they enjoy their own choice. It's kind of this is basically based on the concept known as laissez-faire theory, in which where everyone has the right to pursue their own choice of economic activity. Okay, so that nobody should be discriminated against in that instance. So there comes the second generation of the human rights. Then the third generation, which is about what known as the solidarity right. Like for example, this is a very recent phenomenon. Okay, a very recent phenomenon in the sense that here we are talking about the right to peace, a right to clean environment, a right to development. Okay, so for instance, the world after, this is especially true after the Second World War, where the we see instances of turmoil, fighting, and so on and so forth. And now, with the last decade, we see, as a result of the environmental degradation, a lot of climatic change is happening. See, for instance, if we looked at what's happening in North America, they are experiencing severe weather conditions. We may say it is strange that sometimes, some snowfall is happening when it is not supposed to be. Or for that matter, floods, landslides are happening where it is not in a season. But don't think for 1 minute this is strange. It is not strange. It is man-made, for instance. Okay, because of the environmental degradation as a result of human activity, economic activity, we have no concern for the environment, and for that matter, nature is replenishing itself. So in that instance, we see natural calamities. So for that thing, this generation of solidarity rights, in which they are now fighting for the right to peace, West Asia if you looked at, the right to clean environment, right to development, look at what's happening in Delhi, right? So these are something, see, everyone has a right to a clean air. So what is the government of Delhi doing about it? Okay, so these are instances where it affects the daily life of the common citizens. So in that instance, we are talking about a kind of a generation of human rights where the focus shifted from one thing to another. Okay, so that is the history of the human rights, we can say, in some aspect. Then I want to take you to a brief historical perspective of how human rights movement, I should say, developed. Okay, I'm not going to detail because this is not a full-fledged lecture. Alright, so I'm just giving you a hint of how eventually the human rights, concept of human rights eventually evolved. Okay, see the Magna, have you heard of the term Magna Carta? It's very, especially for students of history, it might be a very relevant topic. Okay, but why I am highlighting this document is that this is supposed to be the earliest document on human rights. Scholars of human rights often trace the origin of human rights through this document. Okay, see, this document was issued in, as I pointed out, 1215 AD. That was during the time of King John of England. Okay, it was a very significant document in which he granted right to the citizen of England as a result of so much of, I won't go into detail into the history. But mind you, the point why I wanted to highlight is that in this document, it gives the rights, freedom, which was hitherto unknown in the English society. Okay, So that becomes one of the first recorded documents in the history of humankind where we can trace the origin of the concept of human rights. Okay, of course, for example, if we looked at the way back into the Roman history, we can see a lot of traces, but it has never been documented. Okay, it has never been documented. So as a scholar, if we are to trace the origin of the human rights, we trace it to the Magna Carta, where we find the very first documentation of the concept of freedom and rights in this Magna Carta. Okay. Then another important document that has been, talked about among the scholars is the Statute of Calais. That was in 1264. Have you heard of this thing? Where is this? I think it's not very common, right? Like the Magna Carta. See, this is a statute which gives privileges to the Jewish minority in Poland. Okay, it was issued by the King of Poland, which was, a kind of protection given to the Jews from discrimination and hate speech. Because everywhere where the Jews are scattered, the unfortunate thing is that they are always, hated. And because if we looked at in Second World War also what happens with Hitler, killing millions of Jews. Why? Just because that they are being discriminated as a community. Okay. See, very interesting is that wherever the Jews are, they are always in a society. They all belong to the wealthy because they are good in business. They are hardworking. They are honest, and in that way, in every society that they settled, when they spread in the Western, especially in Europe, see, they always belong to that society where in the business grew so much. So why does Hitler hate the Jews so much? Was that one of the accusations he made to the Jews was that they are eating away the economic benefits of the German economy, and as a result of that, the pure German Aryans are suffering because of the Jews. This was one of the accusations that Hitler made in trying to justify his genocide of the Jews, right? So in that instance, the Statute of Calais is a very important concept where we see for the very first instance a protection given to a community, a minority community within the society. Okay, so that became a very interesting concept. Then comes the medieval natural law tradition. I have taken this from some of the political theory as espoused by John Locke, and then we're talking about the Jacques Rousseau. Okay, I don't know whether you read about the political theories, but in this natural law concept that has been espoused or propagated by these medieval thinkers, we can see their concept of natural law in which a man, when he is born free. Okay, so when a man is born, naturally he is born free. That was the guiding, the starting point of these thinkers when they come up with this, theories on political concept. Okay. So in that instance, we are looking. I can't go into detail because our time is very limited. For that matter, I have only around. I still have around 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, I'll just try to go faster. Then comes the United States Declaration of Independence of 1776. Which was followed by the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. So these very important, milestone with regard to the Declaration of Independence and of the Declaration of the Rights of Man, both in America and in France, became the biggest foundation of modern concept of human rights. Because on this, we don't have the term human rights. But some of the freedom, the concept of freedom that they espouse, the fraternity, equality, okay, these are something with which the term human rights is based. If you study human rights, that means naturally you are going to talk about egalitarianism, equality, concept of equality. Okay, Then you're going to talk about fraternity, the fraternity of our fellow human beings with us, that we are no different, like we are both. So these are the concepts which was, made famous in this declaration, and which became the foundation stone of the concept of human rights. All right. So then, eventually, as a result of all this, we see the abolition of the Slavery Abolition Act 1833 in England, and which was followed by the, American Civil War under Abraham Lincoln, in which we all know the history of the American Civil War, in which we see the freedom of the black slavery. Okay, so that are some of the historical perspective. If we go through them, we can see the development of the, the idea and the concept and the nature of human rights as it slowly evolved into a solid document. All right. Then I'll just skip through, coming to the United Nations and human rights. Okay. See, these are step by step. I'm going to take lead you towards the concept of human rights. So before we move to our main topic, that is the National Commission of Human Rights in India, I'm just giving you a glimpse of how human rights had eventually evolved and how it became one of the cornerstones with which our constitution is based. All right. So now coming to the human rights in United Nations, as we have already listened in the previous lecture. The United Nations, the preamble of the United Nations Charter provides that the members reaffirmed, means like they solemnly put their faith, okay, in the fundamental human rights, that is in the equal rights of men and women. When we talk about fundamental human rights, we are talking about the equal rights of men and women. That was a cornerstone to the Charter of the United Nations. Okay, and the Article 1, Clause 3 of the United Nations Charter, if we go through that, it says that one of the objective and purpose of the United Nations is, quote unquote, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights. Here we come for the very first time the term human rights mentioned very specifically. Okay, and for the fundamental freedom for all without distinction to race, sex, religion, or language. So, an Article 55 provides that the United Nations shall promote that the UN shall promote the universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedom for all. So these are some of the instances where we find mentioning of the specific term human rights in the very charter of the United Nations. Okay, we all know what is the charter, the significance and importance of the Charter of the United Nations, right? Charter, it's like a constitution of the United Nations where the signatories of the countries who are a member of the United Nations pledged that they would fulfill, okay, the charters which is in the United Nations. That means if the charters mention this thing, then the member countries of the United Nations solemnly, by their own initiative, that they would protect, undue step to protect human rights. Okay, now they became not only of the United Nations as a whole, but individually the states are now under obligation as a signatory states to the United Nations to protect human rights in their respective countries. Alright. Then comes the United Nations and Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I think we have just, so I won't go into detail, I'll just skip through. Then we have the Geneva Conventions. This is practically about the international law, okay? Because there are instances where, see, under the Geneva law, this conventions, we have the Hague Conventions of 1899 to 1907, in which within the United Nations machinery, human rights issue became the primary concern of the United Nations Security Council, and that of the Human Rights Council, which was an important body to the United Nations. Okay, so we can't go into detail on that. So I'm just skip through some of the primary concern of the United Nations, both the Security Council and that of the Human Rights Council are, for instance, the issues on human rights. Then it becomes, for example, in the situation of conflict, the protection of the women and children who are not of the fighting force, that became a major concern in some of the conflict areas. So these are something which we can't go into detail because of the lack of time. All right, so I'll just skip through. Coming to human rights and Indian constitutions, because after all, if we are going to trace the origin or the development or the evolution of the National Commission of Human Rights in India, we need to look at how at the international level, then how is it incorporated in India is through our constitution. Okay, see the framer of our constitution, especially Dr. Ambedkar, it took a special care. That means he gave it a priority that the protection of human rights, especially of the weaker section of the society, is guaranteed in the constitution. Okay, because we all know that he belonged to the weaker section, like the underprivileged class, and that he was all his life he was fighting for right, which was denied because of his incident of birth, because he belonged to a Dalit. So that doesn't mean that just because he was born of a Dalit, that means he should be discriminated against. So all through his life he was fighting against this discrimination. And as a father of the Indian Constitution, he took great pain that this protection are incorporated in a very detailed way so as to guarantee maximum protection to the people, weaker section of the people. So in that instance, where does he put this protection in our constitution? He involved it through the part 3, the whole section on part 3, which is about fundamental rights, okay, which starts from Article 14 to 32, and that he doesn't, with that he was still unsatisfied. Okay, see how Article 14 and 32 so as a result of that, he was still not satisfied with the part 3 of the constitution, with which he incorporated all the necessary guarantees of freedom, all right, and protection. So he added still the directive principle of state policy, which it takes over from Ireland. So these are something of how significant it is to the framer of the constitution. Okay, so Article 14 to 18, which is in part 3 of our constitutions, if we looked at it in a brief way, see Article 14 to Constitution guarantees the right to equality to every citizen of India. Just let me read it through. See, Article 15 relates to prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. So, number 1, that is being dealt with. And secondly, Article 16 guarantees equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. Okay. Then 17 talks about abolition of untouchability, equality in the society. Then 18 talks about the abolition of titles, privileges given to the higher castes. Then Article 19 deals with the freedom of speech and expression. Then Article 21 deals with the right to life and liberty. See, imagine how well he incorporated the concept of human rights into our constitution. Then again, having said that, in Article 32, if we read it very carefully, when we are talking about the right to remedial expression, means like those freedoms and equality guaranteed by Article 14 to 19, if someone is being denied by the state, or for that matter any organization, or for that matter any individual, then what the idea is that he can go to the court of law to seek justice and redressal. Okay, so Article 32 provides for that provision so that we can seek justice and redressal. Okay, so, and having said that, the court, especially the High Court and the Supreme Court, are vested with one important power that is known as the power of judicial review. This is a very, very important power which was given to the law courts in India. That means it gives that power to strike down any legislation and executive order which are violative of the provision of the Indian Constitution. Okay, that's very, very significant. Hegi Umlota said, if this is not available in the Constitution, what is the point of having Article 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19? Are you following it? So, the significance of Article 14 to 19 can be found with the power of redressal given in Article 32. Okay, these are some of the safeguards. Interesting, coming to our topic, National Human Rights Commission. Coming to the National Human Rights, I just don't want to exceed my time, that's the issue. The Human Rights Commission, NHRC as it is commonly known, was established on October 12, 1993. And the statute under which it is established is the Protection of Human Rights Act that was enacted in 1993 and it was amended later in 2006. Okay, so this became the cornerstone of the founding or establishment of the National Human Rights Commission in India, which would be given the task of, ensuring that this human rights as it was provided in our constitutions are executed, okay, enjoyed by the people. So this Protection of Human Rights Act that was enacted in 1993 by the Parliament and ratified by the President of India, it was in conformity with the Paris Principles. What is this Paris Principle? You see, it's the kind of an international workshop that was held in Paris in October 1991. And in this workshop, there was a lot of deliberation on the concept of human rights. Okay, and so this workshop comes up with a kind of a recommendation that was later termed as principles. And this was endorsed by the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1993. And as a result of this endorsement by the United Nations, then it became an important material for framing the basic concept on the protection of human rights. So this was taken as the content of our Human Rights Act. We framed the Indian government the Indian government enacted the protection of human rights in 1993. All right. So we can say that the NHRC is an embodiment of India's concern for the promotion and protection of human rights. So the main responsibility or the purpose of establishing the National Human Rights Commission was to ensure that the principles of freedom, equality, and all that has been enumerated in our Constitution in Part 3 and Article 32 are being enforced. So the purpose of National Commission is to make sure that these are ensured in the daily working of the government. Okay, so the National Commission was constituted under Section 3 of the 1993 Act. What is that 1993 Act? That's Protection of Human Rights Act, 1993, Clause 3, for better protection of human rights in India. So the term human right as it was defined in the section 2, clause D of the 1993 Act, I just put it in the slide, is that human rights means, this is where we come to the definition of what is human rights, okay, in India. So if you're going to talk about, if somebody asks you to define human rights, this is your answer. The official answer to the definition of the term, what is human rights, okay. If you quote this, nobody can contest it, okay, because this is the official definition of the National Human Rights Commission, which has a mandate to make sure that human rights are being enjoyed by the people of India. So, coming to that, human rights means the rights relating to life, liberty, equality and dignity of the individual guaranteed by the constitutions or embodied in the international covenant. What is this international covenant? I think I have just mentioned that one, right? Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Then those are the things that we are, when we talked about the embodiment in the international covenant and the enforcement by court in India. Okay, so that means whatever has been decided and interpreted by the court of law, that became enforceable. Okay, and so that is how the and in that instance, this NHRC, the very first feature of the NHRC is that it is an autonomous body created by an act of parliament. That means, in other words, when we use the term autonomous, then it means it has the freedom to exercise its mandate without any undue interference from the government. Are you following it? Without any, that means it is a kind of say independent body which don't have to fear any government, whether it is the government of the Central Union or that of the state. All right. That is one important point that we need to come. Then, coming to the features of the NHRC, coming to the features of NHRC, see, as I have just listed out, is committed to provide independent views on issues within the parlance of the constitution or in law for the time. So, the first important features of the NHRC is the last sentence that I put, that is the Commission takes an independent state irrespective of the governments. Okay, so that means, in other words, Narendra Modi cannot influence the decision of the National Rights Commission. Okay, for that matter. But I don't know how far he is able to manipulate it. That's another question. Because there has been a cry that all the important institutions of the India, whether it be RBI, universities, those independent autonomous body has been, slowly put under the radar of the Narendra Modi-led government. I don't know whether this is true, but there has been a lot of, I think you might have read it in your WhatsApp group, so that, just and coming back to our topic, the NHRC has the power of a civil court. What does that mean? That means, for example, if somebody has felt that his right has been infringed upon, okay, then he can approach the National Human Rights Commission for redressal. And upon that, the National Human Rights Commission would constitute a panel of judges, retired or whatsoever, and then their arbitration would be instituted. So in that, if the appellant is said to have, being denied of his human rights, then penalty can be imposed on the other side. So that is the power of the civil court. Okay, so that it has a huge mandate on the other side. But that doesn't mean that it can take upon the criminal case. No, criminal case is a different matter. All right. So this National Human Rights Commission would take up a case only related to human rights. Are you getting it? So there has to be a difference between the normal civil courts judges we have, right? So that's a different issue. Then it has that authority to grant an interim relief to those who are being denied their rights. So these are some of the features with which we can see that the NHRC has indeed a very wide mandate, and that it has that unique mechanism with which it also monitors the implementation of its various recommendations. We can't go into detail and all that. If you read there, go to the website, I think you can find all those necessary things. And secondly, coming to the organizational structure, or we can say the composition of the NHRC. Can you see it in the slides? See, this is the composition of the NHRC. On top we have the chairperson. Okay, on top we have a chairperson, who are usually former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India. Okay, and under him we have three members, who is or has been a judge of the Supreme Court, then who is or has been a Chief Justice of the High Court, then two members from amongst persons having knowledge of or practical experience in matters relating to human rights. These are a seat meant for prominent citizens who devoted their lives, their works for promoting human rights. Okay, prominent citizens. But this two is very, very important. These are the officials. Okay, one, a judge, either serving or a retired judge of the Supreme Court, then again of the High Court. So representation of both the Supreme and the High Court is there. And thirdly, we are talking about those NGOs, individuals who have been actively endeavoring the promotion of human rights. They might belong to some important NGOs or something like that, but these are matters which belong to the individual prominent citizens, especially who has their expertise on human rights. Okay, then deemed member it is called. Okay, these are something, it's like an ex officio. Because in BISO, we are very familiar with the term, instead of deemed members, traditionally we use ex officio. Deemed members, that means who are chairpersons of the following commissions: National Commission for Minorities, Commission for Scheduled Castes, Commission for Scheduled Tribes, and National Commission for Women. These are the important commissions we have, and the chairpersons of these commissions would always be the ex officio member of the NHRC. Are you following it? Composition of the strength of the National Human Rights Commission. Okay, at the highest level, mixed body. Then comes the appointment and removal. So once they are in office, that doesn't mean that they are indestructible, because since they belong to since they are of an autonomous character, that doesn't mean that they can hold office without any restriction. So there is a provision of removal of those persons who are in office, because they have to discharge their duties to the best way possible. Okay. So in that instance, see, the chairperson is appointed. Why I put this graph is that it's like this. See, the chairperson and members, they hold an office for a term of 5 years. Okay, or until they attain the age of 70 years, whichever is earlier. Okay, kum samsarian in ma amo tam kum nga an pan so ma at kum an tam man na kum samsarin tin chuan an chuang nga ya tani lo chuan kum nga thleng a kha an ti the ta ni mo chuan other player chuan chairperson aka consider again. The chairperson and the members of the commission are appointed by the President of India on the recommendation of a committee consisting of this is a different body. Don't confuse it with the earlier slide with which I had talked about the composition of the NHRC. Okay, so this is a separate body which was solely meant for the approval, no, the appointment and the removal of the members of the National Commission. Okay, a separate body in which we have the chairperson, which is the Prime Minister of India. Okay, then the other members would include the Speaker of the House of the Parliament, that means House Lok Sabha Speaker. Okay, then the Minister in charge of the Ministry or Home Affairs. So in that instance, this would be, it's not that clear, but in my slides it's quite clear. See, this is Minister in charge. The second one is the Minister in charge. That means Home Ministry, because basically human rights issue would always be an issue which is concerned with the Home Ministry. Okay, so in that instance, if we are going to talk about it in today's situation that we are talking about, we have a Home Minister here. Where is our present Home Minister? Rajnath Singh. Okay, this is for Rajnath Singh. Right. Then comes the leader of the opposition. So, who is our leader of the opposition right now? The leader of opposition is Rahul Gandhi. Then the next member is the leader of the opposition in the Council of States. Okay. Then the deputy chairman of the Council of States. So these are the members who can appoint and remove the members of the NHRC. Okay. So they're coming to the last slide. See, the powers and functions and powers of the Commission. If you just go through, the Commission performs the following functions. It inquires, suo motu or on a petition presented to it by a victim or any person on his behalf into complaint of. See, these are something which the NHRC can deliberate upon. Okay, we just go through. So if you are violation of human rights, this is extremely obvious. Negligence in the prevention of such violation by a public servant. Maintenance, for example, we have an issue right now in Mizoram. Right? So, for that instance, I don't know whether you are aware that the victims, they went to the police and they tried to file an FIR. And one of the messages in the Facebook that I read was that the police were not willing to file the FIR. And they said, why don't you go and, try to make peace with each other outside of the, and so that there is no case. So, if that is the situation, that policeman who refused to enter that FIR can be brought to the National Commission. And he would have a very serious case. Okay, these are something that we need to be aware as a student. Okay, negligence by a public servant. Then thirdly, intervene in any proceeding involving any allegations of violation of human rights pending before a court with the approval of such court. That means, in other words, supposing there is an ongoing case in a court of law. Okay, and supposing that went on further and in due course the case seems to become a violation of human rights, and if that instant the National Commission can intervene. It has that mandate to intervene upon the working of the courts. Okay. Then the Commission has that right to visit any jail or any other institutions under the control of the state government where persons are detained or lodged for purpose of treatment, reformation or protection to study the living conditions of the inmates and make recommendation. Okay. Mizoram ni lena ma chuan kan la a zia ka ti china ka lo ve ve la tu china kan chong chuak ko la he kan da tel ngam lo wa. Hey Tidan, I think we have one case with this point. Think wala nge kan. Ngai to bong bong ke man ke kun nai me ya. Chon kuya. Nge kha khalai mun kha. What? From time to the camping center, we have this issue, right? State Commission. And so you think about State Commission, they don't invoice like on law, it may have. Can moon in that I don't want to take about it. It's like a current. Just invoice the kind of flight. Why I mention is that in our even in our local context we have this issue and we have never seek the intervention of the State Commission. Okay, we have never seen, we have never approached. So, Mizo society is one thing which we are very sometimes. I use the word naive. Okay, kan to kuahen kan mol. So kan tipi ngam lo naive ti kan so if you have you heard of this term naive? Oh, mol it's yellow. Master fig. Lu tu box ni lo lai ti kan. Oh, thì cần bơm dâm thì mấy chị thằng lại so I think with that I will close this small lecture on there's a whole lot of other functions and powers of the Commission. Review the factors including acts of terrorism that inhibit the enjoyment of human rights and recommend appropriate treatment. See, this is very, very relevant in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Then in the state of Manipur, Nagaland, where we have what was that act? That just tell me. Huh? Exactly. So in that stage where we have the position of Armed Forces Special Power Act, AFSA, we find traces of violation of human rights both from the security personnel as well as that of the insurgents. Right. So this became an extremely important issue where the National Commission can play a very relevant role. Alright. Then see, it can undertake and promote research in the field of human rights. As a student, as a researcher, you can approach the National Commission for funding if you want to undertake a kind of research, especially on the issue of human rights. Okay. That's very important. So these are something with which in India some of the major issues which has been there in India and which are which the National Human Rights Commission has taken step. Custodial torture, very relevant, right? Like incident of see in Jammu and Kashmir, in Manipur, even in Mizoram during the days of insurgency. This is very, very common. Okay, this is very, very common. This is a violation of human rights on the part of the state law enforcement agency. So the common people cannot do anything about it. Okay, so in that instance, we see the significance of the National Commission. Because after all, the law enforcement agency act under the orders of the government. So even if you approach the government will not do anything about it. So the only place where we can seek redressal is on the National Commission. Okay, that's and this is very, very widespread, especially in a disturbed area. Then right to work and labor rights. This is very important. I think in Mizoram we have labor rights. I think we need to look into this also. Then extrajudicial killings. What is this? This is connected to this. Okay. See, for example, fake. Have you ever heard of the term fake encounter? What is fake encounter? See, in Mizo, the Mizo National Front, the volunteers died. Many died as a result of this fake encounter. This is the way the law enforcement. The armies, especially even the police, justify their senseless killing of innocent people. Okay,
they just killed whosoever they want because of some mere suspicion without any proof. Okay, so when after they kill that person or individual, then what do they do? What excuse did they make to the public or to their higher authorities? They just place a pistol in his hand, take a picture, and said he was aiming at me, he was firing it at me, so I had to retaliate. Okay, that's called fake encounter. Antanua, andutu, antitir. Fake encounter. They can't. Anmirin that zone mo, anduyo, anduyo, koisoy mi aloboka, andutua, anmesa nua. Emo, tinemo, again, ando. Hey, elamachon army ho po hin rule let katyang sin misho tak takin ng beto. Ka innocent civilian ho ang pangyan. Ka po fake encounter in an injustice. Age common law. Oh. Kaya po sila hindi patuma kanin beya. Oh, kanin kapa kita sa kapa nanti mais din. Katyang terrorist ka anso katon. Oh. Nilawa innocent civilians ka inalet passing na kan navy ang police day kan army niya an mani ka ang katiya ang manituan an mani si Koiwang Chu court martial kasi kami ang escape being from it's very common. No, arbitrary arrest and detention, excessive powers of the armed forces and the police, the sexual violence, conflict-induced internal displacement. No, conflict-induced internal displacement. So what's happening in Rohingya? Okay, these are some of the limitations of the commission. Just have a glimpse. Oh. To make recommendations without the powers to enforce decision. And these are contradict law. Amana decision punishment So with this, I'll just close my presentation.